Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing a brand new review, and today I'm going to be talking about Steve, which releases here in UK cinemas this Friday, ahead of a Netflix release on October the 3rd, which has had its premiere the past weekend at Toronto International Film Festival. Most people know it as TIFF, and I've been lucky in watching this film early, and I'm here to give my thoughts on this film. For those unfamiliar with this, it is directed by Tim Mealance, who people will best know from directing a good chunk of season 3 of Peaky Blinders, and this is him reuniting with Cillian Murphy in that respective, who is also producing this film as well as starring in the lead role of Steve. Now, with this film not yet being out, of course I'm not going to give too much away with regards to story if you're unfamiliar. This is an actor that you're sold on his projects, you'll no doubt be watching this. If you're curious from TIFF, you want to know what other people think, then as always, please do comment your thoughts below. I do want to know what people are saying and thinking on this one. It's a very different film to, I think, what people may have seen, and I do think outside of England this is going to be spoken about very differently, so I'm curious to know what people think on this one, so please do comment your thoughts. If you like this video, if you like film festivals, we're going to be doing London Film Festival in a couple of weeks here in the UK, so do hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot more dramas coming, we're moving out of blockbuster season, we're moving into festival, award season, whatever you want to call it, and we're going to obviously be doing a lot of these types of films, so do comment, like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. But I'm here to talk about this film, and if those are unfamiliar with the story, this follows the head teacher of a reform school in the mid-90s in the UK, Steve, played by Cillian Murphy, and it follows him across a 24-hour period. I'm not going to give anything away past that point. I'm sort of already mentioned about the school dynamic, that I'm curious to know what people think of this outside the UK. Obviously, this film's set in 1996, and that's the year I was born, so I can't sit here and say I remember how schools were back then, alongside it being reform schools. Obviously I've never been in one of those, but there's a lot of things in this which I think is going to land with people that maybe went to school in Britain in the noughties, in the early 10s, or are more established with the British, not educational system, but there's some really interesting political conversations and comments in this which I'll try and bring up on without giving too much away. But it's a really interesting perspective and idea for a film that I am totally unfamiliar with. I couldn't sit here and tell you if films have done this before. I know it is based off a novella written by Max Porter. He's actually adapted the screenplay as well, which is very interesting. And he's worked with Cillian Murphy before on a theatre play, I think, from the mid-10s. So Cillian Murphy's obviously once again in the leading role on this, and he's actually spoken about this at TIFF over the weekend, saying that this was obviously done post Oppenheimer around the time of the award season, and he wanted to put this into production, and he enjoys working with recurring collaborators. Now, he didn't just work with Tim Mealance on Peaky Blinders, he worked with him on small things like these. I spoke about Max Porter as well. He's done this through his production company, one of his production partners, so it's really interesting to see not necessarily the roles Cillian Murphy's picking, because he is someone that's been starring in British dramas going back multiple decades now, but it's very interesting with how much bigger he's gotten across that time period, inclusive of an Oscar campaign. The more projects he's able to get greenlit, the more projects he's able to star in. And I think, as I said, this is one that's going to be very different, and I think this will turn people different ways. I think everyone will have a different experience with this film, and my initial thoughts on this film is that I really appreciated it. I don't know if I like it in the context of I love this film, it was really enjoyable, it's not got the intention of that, but the storytelling perspective of following a head teacher within a very difficult environment at a school, I thought was really interesting, at least. Now, obviously, I've not been at a school since 2012. Obviously, it wasn't like this sort of school as well, but there were some great things I enjoyed in this, and a really silly thing to talk about, but a big thing, is the fact that this is a British ensemble of a cast. The majority of the actors playing the students looks like it's like their first roles, which is great because it's not necessarily familiar faces as such, but it feels like they've obviously brought in young actors, auditioned for these roles, these very specific roles as well. Some of them are recognisable, some of them aren't. I'll go through a couple in this cast, but it felt like a sort of traditional British drama. And the sort of perplexing thing with this is that it's on Netflix. This is absolutely the sort of thing I'd expect to see on BBC One or through BBC Studios, but to see this picked up by Netflix I thought was really interesting. And I do wonder if it is that post-award season, not Cillian Murphy picking his projects, but are the companies such as Netflix more entitled to pick up projects such as this? And I really do respect them if they are. That whilst he's won this Oscar or was in the middle of campaigning for this Oscar, the fact that he was able to reach out to the UK Netflix team and they greenlit this project on the go. This might not be something other people have greenlit or other companies were willing to do. And I think it's great for him as an actor, as a performer, that he hasn't allowed the award season to dictate the projects he's taken or the work he wants to do. If anything, it's given him the mindset of, I can work with whoever I would like to work with. That seems to be what he's spoken about. Of course, we're going to see him in 20 years later, the Bone Temple next year as well. He'll be returning to that. So it is quite exciting seeing Cillian Murphy's work post-Oppenheimer. And if I talk about his performance in this film, as you would expect with Cillian Murphy, an actor who is very, very... what's the right word to say? Not cold, but very dedicated. And I'm not talking method, not that at all, because that gets a different conversation these days. But Cillian Murphy is one of those actors where he dedicates himself to a performance and he really feels believable. He almost feels like a character actor who's become a leading man in a non-insulting way, that he's able to transform into different characters in different roles. And I know he's spoken about his own family backstory with this, that I think his grandparents were teachers and one of his parents, or both of them, were teachers as well. That it was quite natural to him to be able to take on a role such as this. And him as a head teacher, I thought he was very good in it. I enjoyed his performance and I like what they did by centering the story on him. Now, my understanding is that the novella focuses on the character of Shai, played by Jay Lycurgo. I'm not too familiar with him outside of being in The Batman, being the kid who he doesn't beat up at the start, he lets him go. It's something where I like the concept that you brought on the author to then make those changes, to revamp it from point of view 1 into point of view 2. We're going to follow the teacher the whole time, and where they go with the story and what's happening within the school, I think is actually the right choice to do it. They also shot the film in chronological order, which goes a long way, which I think, understandable, you can't do it on sort of big feature films, blockbusters, that sort of conversation, but on smaller dramas filmed across a few weeks you can. And at times it's really enjoyable that you can make them and edit them in a way where we can see the performances, whether they need to get more intense as the film progresses. But chronological shooting, there is a place for it. It's a bit rarer to do, but I do really like it when films do that, and it does benefit this. And I mentioned the character of Shai, played by Jay Lycurgo. He's very good in this film. He's kind of the second lead character. You'll see him on the poster. He's the only other one out of focus. In focus that isn't Cillian Murphy. I thought he gave a great performance in this, playing a teenager who's been very troubled in his personal life. Obviously, with it taking place in a reform, we get different types of people. There might be the aggressors, there might be people that are bullied, that are shy. And I think it's a really interesting perspective for this film to have a character focusing on their mental health, with it being set in 1996, that we've seen obviously the rise of mental health services being provided in the last couple of decades here. But it's interesting to get that perspective in the mid-90s. And if you do look at the current political system within the UK, a portion of this film is TV journalists talking about, well, some of these kids are horrible, terrible people. Should taxpayers be paying for these when it's more expensive? Should we just get rid of them? And it's asking those questions that I think should be asked, and they're very much being focused on today in 2025. So it's interesting to see how it was in the middle of the 90s. Granted, this is a fictional story, not a real life documentary, but I really appreciated what they did with the different types of students and spending time with them. And it's quite eye-opening into the UK political system with the educational, because we also get probably my standout scene in the film where an MP visits the school. For context, it's 1996. Obviously, the UK election was 1997, and it was obviously the turning point of the Tories going out, Labour coming in. So we have an incredible scene, if I'm honest. Maybe my favourite line of the year, said by a character in this scene. I won't give it away. We've got an actor from the thick of it in this as well, which was great to see. He's playing an MP, a knighted one, and he just has this most outrageous, stereotypical, doesn't give a crap about anyone in the room, but what he cares about is trying to grab their votes, talking down to them, making them think they're stupid and that he's above them. It's a great scene, and whilst it is intended to be funny for us, there is deeper meaning to that. And I think you can only get that in a British drama such as this, that the people involved in making this film and producing it didn't forget the roots. It didn't feel like it's been, oh, now Netflix is involved, let's not Americanise this, but let's bring a different light onto this film. It feels like the consistent vision from what was there from day one is there at the end of the film. and I appreciate it for that. Now, the film isn't without issue for me. Whilst I do really appreciate what they did with the school stuff, what they did with the 90s setting, there was something about this where I struggled, and I can't give too much away respectively of story points, but there's just a couple of things that go a bit too far for me, drawn out sequences that I don't think needed to be drawn out, and it's quite a minor gripe because I did enjoy watching this film and I appreciate this film, and I certainly think people here in the UK will have a different affection to this compared to those outside of this country, which is strange to say given it's premiered in Toronto and not here. So I'm in a weird zone of this because I'm recommending the film. If I sort of begin to summarise the review, I'm recommending this film. I think it's worth watching. I think it's worth giving it a go. It's a 90-minute runtime, and it does cover some very, very tough subject matters that do go on at schools here in the UK, that did back then, that did preceded it and still do today. So it's interesting to see this applied in a Netflix film, and I think this is where we credit the like of Cillian Murphy for being involved still, that he doesn't need to do a film this, but these are the films he wants to do, these are the talent he wants to work with, and it looks like it's a great platform for some of the younger actors to get their breakthrough, to work with someone such as him, to use this to get their breakout performances. So yeah, I'm recommending this film. It's a very difficult review to do because it's such a different film to what people are expecting. There was so little known about this film as well. I just definitely want to recommend it to people, and most likely it will be seen on Netflix. I don't think it will have a wide release, as Netflix films very rarely do, but I'm curious to know its reception here in the UK when it does launch. So that is me rounding out of this review. I hope you've enjoyed it. I mentioned London Film Festival earlier too. We'll be covering that. We're in the process of planning what films we want to see, what we're going to be doing. It's obviously still a month away, but when we've got more details, we will share more details of our intention and our plans for that. So that is me rounding out. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.